YouTube, with the Denver Nuggets being eliminated from the 2024 NBA playoffs by the Minnesota Timberwolves in the second round, the 2023 defending champions will not have an opportunity to defend their title any longer and be forced to make some tough decisions in the offseason. In this video, I want to talk about what those decisions might be that they have to make in the 2024 offseason to be able to regain their throne in 2025 on the top of the NBA mountain that they will have to climb once again. What's next for the Denver Nuggets, folks? Let's talk about it. So before we address the decisions the Nuggets are going to have to make in this offseason and what they might be able to do to improve on the margins with this team to get back into their prime form like they were in 2023 when they won the title, we first have to address what the issues are with this team and why they even lost in the second round to Minnesota in the first place. So let's talk about what the issues are with this roster and this team in general, and then we'll talk about how they can solve them in the offseason realistically. Number one, I think, one of the more important things to note about this round 2 series against Minnesota for Denver was Jamal Murray's injury. Murray clearly looked hobbled throughout the playoffs, wasn't quite himself throughout the playoffs, and obviously that's going to have a massive impact on this team as a lot of their offense is generated from Jamal Murray and Jokic two-man game, and if Murray isn't in peak form, then the Denver Nuggets can't be. So really, Jamal Murray being healthy would have, I think, changed the outcome of this series quite a bit, but that's not to say there aren't some real issues with this team and weren't in this playoff run, but I just want to mention the Murray injury before we get into the actual things they can change about their roster in the offseason. It was very important. The biggest issue I find with the Nuggets, and I've talked about this in a past video, but I find that throughout the playoffs this year, the Nuggets had a real short rotation and depth problem in their rotation, only being able to run a 6-man rotation really for a game 7 type scenario. There's not a lot of guys you can trust on that bench to come in and provide solid minutes. So the depth was an issue, you know what I mean? They have a 6-man rotation that is really playable and great and sufficient and all that stuff. And once you get to around the 7th and 8th man, it gets a little tricky to put valuable pieces on the floor when your starters are resting. Primarily in the front court, the backup 5 position was a real issue throughout the playoffs for Denver. Your only option really being DeAndre Jordan and rotating Aaron Gordon at the 5 if Jokic needs to rest. That just doesn't work so well, and DeAndre Jordan wasn't really equipped for the challenge. I mean, I think he did what Denver asked him to do, but I don't think it was enough. He's just an older player who just quite frankly doesn't have backup 5 for a championship team level of play left in him, and obviously the Nuggets will look to move on in that regard. Jokic in game 7 played all but 1 minute and was clearly gassed by the end of the game and gave everything he had, but you have to address the backup 5 in the offseason. That is a real issue on this roster that I think held them back quite a bit, and without Jokic being able to rest, he gets tired towards the end of the game and he can't give his all when it matters most. So that kind of plays into the depth, rotation type of thing, but it is a real problem for this team. And I think, the last problem I'll mention is just more reliable players in general. You have some intriguing young pieces on this roster that maybe aren't ready for a substantial role in crunch time in a game 7, like Peyton Watson, who I think has a lot of upside in the NBA. He is an athletic, versatile defensive wing who, if he can get his 3-point percentage and his catch and shoot percentage up to around 36 or 40%, he will be an absolute problem in this league as a role player and a great bench option for Denver. He's long, athletic, smart, tough, a versatile defender, like I said, and he profiles well against a lot of matchups. He can guard multiple positions. I think he will be able to do that in the future, but in order to stay on the floor with Denver, he has to be able to knock down threes at a consistent level from the corner, and he just wasn't able to do that this season. So hopefully that can change. If you're Denver, you can bank on that maybe for next season. That saves you a guy you got to get in free agency. So those are the issues with Denver. Just a quick recap: it is depth, it is the backup 5 primarily, and it is a short rotation issue. They need more reliable role players, primarily in the front court, and maybe a little bit more youth in the bench in general, as Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan are your backup 5 and point guard. We'll talk about Reggie Jackson in just a minute, but I think a little bit more youth and athleticism and extra juice off the bench athletically would serve them well. So they need more reliable role players. Let's talk about how Denver can realistically address these issues in the offseason with their cap situation and assets on the books. What are the decisions they're going to have to make in the offseason, and what can Denver do to address these needs? Let's talk about it. So if you're Denver, you have 11 players on the books already for next season, and your cap situation, quite frankly, is not good. If everything stayed the same right now, the Denver Nuggets would have 0 cap space and be well over the second apron, which is addressed in the new CBA, which basically means that the Denver Nuggets will be, through certain rule changes and things with the CBA, essentially punished financially and flexibility wise because they have so much money on their roster. And so it really limits your options to be able to do things like, get a mid-level exception player or sign free agents in general. Right now, if everything stayed the same money wise for the Nuggets, they would have to only be able to sign players for a veteran minimum from my understanding. So that is obviously not good. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that is a real problem problem for the Denver Nuggets, as, they clearly need an influx of some, important pieces on the bench, and, veteran minimum contracts aren't the best option to do that always. So you kind of have to work with what you have now. If you're Denver, there are very little options on the margins to be able to improve this team as it sits right now. We'll get to that in a minute, but the biggest thing in this offseason for the Denver Nuggets that they're going to have to decide, and really will be up to this player, is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's player option for $15 million. KCP is one of the players that I mentioned earlier that is so important to this Denver machine that makes them go. He is an amazing role player, obviously worth $15 million if you're Denver, but it is a player option, so he will have the opportunity to test the open market. And I do believe Denver can pay him over $15 million if he declines his player option, but that will really set them back even more because it'll be a multi-year extension for a little bit more money than $15 million, I would imagine. But because they have his bird rights, they can do that, I believe. The problem is that just puts you in a worse situation financially if you're Denver for the future. So KCP is so important to this team. I can't even stress it enough. He is a real asset for this team. One of the best role players in the league, hands down. He can guard multiple positions on the wing. He is an elite three-point shooter and shooter in general, shooting 40% or higher from the three-point line in each of the last 2 seasons. Dynamic defender, like I said, and just a really smart player overall. He is essential to this Denver Nuggets unit, and keeping him around is obviously got to be a priority. But I will say, if he declines his $15 million player option, he will likely get more money on the open market. I would imagine around $20 million a year for his services somewhere else, or maybe a 3-year extension or so, which would be well deserved. But if you're Denver, do you entertain the idea of paying him that, or do you let him walk in hopes that maybe that contract being off the books allows you to attack some of these needs in free agency, as that would likely free up maybe some of the necessary flexibility to be able to make some bigger decisions that you can't right now because of the new CBA. From what I understand, this would impact the Nuggets' ability to make certain decisions in free agency in regards to the second apron. I'm not totally read up on all my, second apron and first apron stuff on this new CBA, so if I get something wrong, I apologize. But from what I read and from my very little understanding of this, if KCP walks in free agency, that frees up a little bit of wiggle room for their, marginal dealings in free agency. So that maybe could be a blessing in disguise if he turns down his player option, but we'll have to see. Reggie Jackson also has a $5 million player option, and I think Reggie Jackson, obviously being an important piece of this second unit, he is the point guard and kind of, Jamal Murray replacement off the bench. He's obviously an older player who no one would say was probably the best backup point guard in the league, but he's an offensive minded guy who can kind of do similar things to Jamal Murray, just on a very smaller scale when Jamal Murray is resting. $5 million for Reggie Jackson isn't a big deal in my opinion. I do think if he were to walk in free agency and get a larger deal, you could always use that $5 million, like I said. So I don't think the $5 million, player option is going to be the deal breaker for the Nuggets offseason either way. I think if you keep him around and he signs that player option, I think, that's a pretty good thing for Denver, but I also think if he walks, you could look at it the same way. So with all that being said, it seems like, the Denver Nuggets are in a real bind here financially. What are some of the things they can try to look into to maybe free up some cap space? And the sad thing is, it might have to be a big move if that's going to happen. Now, Jamal Murray is due for a max extension, which he's definitely going to get, and he already is extension eligible from what I understand. Obviously, he's going to get that max extension, but if you're just looking at the Denver Nuggets contract situation, the elephant in the room is the Michael Porter Jr. contract. Michael Porter Jr. making over $30 million per year. If you could, somehow get some value in return for that, I'm not saying they should trade Michael Porter Jr. I'm just saying they will probably look into it, because Michael Porter Jr., an obvious asset to this team and their finals run and all their success. He is one of the greatest shooters in the entire NBA. Some of the threes that he makes at a consistent rate are absolutely insane. There's not a lot of shooters like MPJ who can consistently knock down a three with a hand right in their face. He's one of the better contested three-point shooters I've ever seen, and he has the size and wingspan and shot release to be able to get it off over really big defenders that are right in his face, like I said, and knock them down consistently. He definitely does other things on the floor, but a player like that you wouldn't want to lose. Can be really valuable for the Nuggets, as we've seen. But if we're being honest with ourselves, is MPJ worth that amount of money? In a vacuum, probably not, right? You'd like to pay him a little bit less for the value he brings to your team. Although it is great value, you look around the league and you see a lot better players for a lot cheaper money. I'm not saying the Nuggets should trade him, but I definitely think they should explore all their options, and if that is one of them, they should look into it and see what pops up on the market, right? If you could get MPJ's contract off the books while receiving really good value for him, maybe some really good draft picks or some tradable assets, or even just a good player back that makes less money, I think obviously you'd be pretty foolish not to entertain those ideas, right? And if MPJ's contract was unloaded off the books, I think you'd have a much more open and flexible net of options to be able to explore after that. So it is an option. I'm just putting it out out there. I don't think they should. But another player that has a maybe overvalued contract right now is Zeke Naji. Zeke Naji is currently making $9 million per season. And, you know, I do think he's a good player, but another contract I see that just maybe doesn't match the value you're getting right now could be useful to explore some, you know, scenarios. But basically what I'm saying is the Denver Nuggets need to improve on the margins, that being their second unit, and their rotation needs to be a lot bigger in the playoffs. You need to be able to rely on multiple players at multiple positions on any given playoff game. Problem is right now they don't have the players or roster to do that, and they're kind of binded financially to a lot of the players they already have. So something is either going to have to change on this, you know, roster financially for you to be able to fill those positions out, or you're going to have to just deal with what you have and bank on a Peyton Watson improvement, a Christian Brown improvement, a Zeke Naji improvement. A lot of these younger guys, you know, you're banking on their potential. You already have, you know, the top end talent that you need. It's not even a question. You have the MVP of the league, one of the greatest players of all time on your roster right now in Nikola Jokic. As long as you have him and Jamal Murray, you're going to be in contention. But do you want to add some, you know, pieces to make this a little bit more of a sure thing next season, so you're not always relying on Murray and Jokic to do everything? I think you have to find, you know, some solid backup pieces like the backup five and the backup wing. You know, Justin Holiday should be a free agent, and will he return? I don't know, but you know, the Denver Nuggets need to improve their bench and their depth, and I don't see, you know, this roster being good enough on the margins, like I said, and there's not a lot of options right now to be able to flesh that out. So something's gonna have to change, or they just rely on, you know, Murray's injury being a problem and try to, you know, run it back next season, which I think could be a perfectly fine option. I just think, you know, it's a little safe and maybe not enough to, you know, put them where they were in 2023. But the big thing obviously is going to be retaining KCP, and if you don't, maybe that's when you shake things up, because if he already leaves, now you look at MPJ and say, you know what, this thing's already changing whether we like it or not, so maybe we'll try to go in a different direction and see if we can do some other things different, like an MPJ trade, like a Zeke Naji trade, to complement Murray and Jokic a little bit better for the future, as this winning window is basically within 3 or 4 years, I would say. So if you're gonna shake it up, no time better than the present, right? So I guess we'll see what the front office decides to do, but let me know down in the comment section what you think the Nuggets should do or will do in this offseason to improve their depth and rotation. Do you think KCP stays? Do you think he walks? Did I get something wrong about the apron stuff in this video? Definitely let me know, because I know a lot of you guys are way more knowledgeable on that topic than I am, so it really helped me out, and I always appreciate you guys' input. But I don't think the Nuggets are in trouble or anything. I don't think their, you know, future depends on this offseason. I just think, you know, there's some little things that they could try to find that, you know, it could definitely push them over the top like they were in 2023. There's a clear lack of depth on this team, and it has to be addressed, right? You definitely got to do something, right? If you're not getting better, you're getting worse in this league, right? Because everyone else is always getting better. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you guys drop a like if you guys did. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. It really means a lot to me. Can we shoot for, I don't know, 15 likes on this video? It would really mean a lot to me. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. We cover basketball topics like this every single day on the channel. I don't want you guys to miss any future ones. I just love basketball, man. I love it more than anything, so I don't want you guys to miss me, you know, sharing my bad takes to the world every day. But either way, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day today, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comment section what you think. All my socials, links are down in the description, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. This is your boy D-Have, and as always, peace.